Thanks for joining us today on our Ask the Expert webinar series. We're really excited to kick it off, so let's intro 10K Advisors. 10K is an on-demand consulting shop, and we have a global community of independent Salesforce experts. So from architects to developers, we connect our customers with the people and skills they're looking for, while giving our experts the freedom to do the work they love most. So with that, I'll kick it off to Jared, COO of 10K Advisors.
Thanks, Molly. Hi, everyone. I'm Jared. I am the COO at 10K. I've been using Salesforce since 2006 and have been working as a consultant and with consulting companies for the last 11 years. Currently, I'm responsible for our expert network, which is the growth and management of all the experts who deliver projects for 10K, as well as delivery management and operations. Joining us today, we also have David Longhini. David, would you mind doing a brief intro?
Hello, everyone. David Longhini. I am currently the CEO of Empodio, which is a mission-driven Salesforce consulting company focusing on field service lightning. Prior to this, I was at Click Software, prior to the acquisition, helping partners enable field service lightning. And going back, I was at Blue Wolf before acquired by IBM, and at several companies as a Microsoft Dynamics CRM architect before I came over to the good side of the force. So excited today to share on field service lightning.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we got you on the good side now. So this webinar is about field service lightning. I guess let me start with, can you give a brief overview of field service lightning? Is it only for service?
No. So field service lightning is for any company who's got somebody who needs to go out into the field and complete work, whether that be field sales or field service. And the way to think about it is almost Salesforce completing the vision of everything you need to do to interact with your customer. First, you're going to get some awareness from them with marketing. Then you've got to convince them that your service is worthwhile for them and provides value. Once you do that, you actually provide the service and delivery. But some of that service and delivery, depending on the company, has to occur on site. You've got to send somebody out to complete the work, or if the work was done in such a way that it needs to be repaired, it needs to be installed, it needs to be maintained, then you actually have to go out and meet the customer where they are. And that's where field service lightning comes into the equation. You have the scenario where if it's coming from field sales, if you're going out to convince them or show them on site that it's a good product for them, or in the case of, for instance, consumer beverages, you're going to their site in order to sell things with your truck and have it right off the truck. You have the scenario in which you need to have a number of customers that you need to go visit, which are your work orders, and you have a number of resources which have the capabilities and skills to complete that work. And you have to take that work that's coming in, assign them to the appropriate resources in the most optimized possible way to ensure that you're minimizing travel, you're meeting customer expectations, you're getting there as soon as possible and prioritizing different customers in the right way and communicating with them to set their expectations, and also some ancillary capabilities like making sure you have the right level of inventory when you're out, and while you're out on the job, making sure that your resources have the right tools, right skills, follow the right instructions, whether that be in the medical field, making sure that you have certain compliance certifications, to just making sure that as your aging workforce ages out and you bring new people in, that you can train them and make sure they're completing and following the right steps along the way.
Okay. So if you are an organization, you have Sales Cloud or Service Cloud, and you're using it right now, sending people out to the field, how do you know that you should start looking at FSL? Like, what are some of the pain points you've seen?
So first of all, the number one pain point that isn't always like the brag about, but people underestimate, is purely visibility. Just simply, Salesforce used to talk about this all the time with Sales and Service Cloud of visibility. Now it's just the name of the game. But when you're talking field service in a lot of different organizations, in a lot of different groups, you have no idea what's going on in the field. It becomes the black box, and that's a major struggle. When you're trying to sell to a customer and you have no idea that your field service team has been out there all week dealing with an issue, that they're repairing a major piece of equipment, that really puts a damper in the salesperson's day, calling out, trying to sell them a new piece of equipment and not knowing that. If the customer service team has no idea where the technician is, whether a technician has been scheduled, how far away are they, what tools are they going to complete, and the past experiences with them, then you're going to end up with a challenge when communicating out. So if you have that scenario, that's a big one coming in, with that disconnect across all of the different teams. But then for larger initiatives, or simply if you're trying to keep up with the times, if you're trying to hit business objectives around response times, around travel, and you just can't do it anymore because your dispatcher is not a human computer, it is not an optimization machine, they're trying to do the best that they can with what's available. If you're struggling to hit customer expectations because right now you're handing a technician a piece of paper that says this is what you need to do today, and they go out and they get a couple signatures, and 30% of your customer service team's calls are, when are they going to be there again? And you have no idea in the world. So you're trying to hit expectations in the age of Uber. You're trying to hit those key objectives, trying to make sure you have the business rules. And what comes up a lot in especially regulated industries, or those that have multiple skill sets, is you're sending people out repeatedly who may not have the right skills. They might not have the right parts. They might be getting sent out, and just because you don't have visibility, you might send somebody out to the same place over and over again, wasting 3 trips to a rural location because you weren't adequately planning for the ability to get it all done in one day.
And you made a mention of another point, and I think it's something to touch base on real quick. Does it matter the size of the organization that you're a part of for Field Service Lightning?
No, we've seen companies as small as 5 people use Field Service Lightning just as their extension, all the way up to tens of thousands being rolled out. It's really the value proposition is always there when it comes to visibility. And the only thing that tends to change is which set of features you use tends to grow. That once you're above an organization of about 30, then you really start to consider the higher level optimization features, because you've got a lot of different paths, a lot of what's going on. But I see no organization too small to find value in it.
Got it. Got it. And that's good to know. So with those pain points, with the lack of visibility, the disconnect between your sales service marketing teams, your field service teams, now that we've sort of identified some of these pain points, how do you know that people are ready to take the next step?
So there's an interesting story of, you've got to either be going towards something that you want or away from something that's painful. So kind of like they joked of digital transformation is years away, and then COVID just said hello. Most people are pushed in one of 2 directions. One is you see people having optimized their field service as much as you possibly can when people are looking behind them on a whiteboard and saying where their technicians are. You've reached a point in which you're really trying to move forward and minimize travel time so you can get more work done. You don't want to hire more people. You've got a dispatcher who's 62 and about to retire, and they know everything about the organization, and training a new dispatcher is going to take you 3 years to be anywhere near as good. So you've got something that you're pushing towards that's trying to get you there, or you're being pushed simply by customer expectations. And that's one of the things that the name of the game, like the telecommunications space, I can compare 2 different scenarios for me right now. The utilities in Buffalo is telecommunications got pushed forward by a couple of companies that were able to change from the I'll be there somewhere today at some point, just stay home, just tell your boss you have to stay home all day, to being able to provide for you, I will be there in between 9 and 11 a.m. The first company to do that made my life so much easier that every other telecommunication company has had to catch up. On the other hand, my gas and utility company still does the same thing. So that direct comparison in between saying, I will be there at some point today. I'll let you know 15 minutes in advance, so I hope your office is less than 15 minutes away. And I will be there sometime in between 9 and 11. And at 7 a.m. that morning, you get a text that says your current expected time is at 9:40. And at 9 a.m., you get the technician is on the way, and you get a little message saying this is the actual drive time so that you can be prepared and make sure you're not in the shower when they arrive. That kind of push from customers expecting things drastically moves you forward. And then you have the organizational side as well. And again, that's that push-pull of making sure that the organization is ready, but you're doing an entire digital transformation. So the very first thing that I would say that makes people ready is Field Service Lightning is a Salesforce product that's designed to extend the flow. It is highly unlikely that I'm going to see somebody coming to me saying, I'm not a Salesforce customer at all. I'm not interested in Salesforce. I want Field Service Lightning. And if I did, I'd say like, it's not even designed to be as a standalone. Everything is really touched. Like that's just not going to happen. So you might want Field Service Lightning and you might be coming to Salesforce for Field Service Lightning, but you're going to have to keep in mind that you're going to have to put together Sales and Service Cloud, at least at the most basic levels, just to be able to feed the work that the work order management is going to be able to do. You have to be prepared for the change management, because one of the things that comes forward a lot for us is your processes are drastically going to change when you are moving from a whiteboard to a global optimization system over time, and having the tools in place to be able to pull that off and having the openness to change business processes to best practices when moving to an electronic age is something that people have to be prepared to do. Because unlike something like Sales Cloud, where you're literally giving a direct to direct, they're still going to customers, they're still calling customers, they're still updating things, you're giving them additional tools. With Field Service Lightning, you're changing the way you work, you're changing how you work, you're changing how you plan your work, you're changing how you design your work, and being open to that is going to put you a long way, because Field Service Lightning is designed to push you into field service best practices as opposed to being able to bludgeon your practices into it, recommended or not, in other clouds. You should have team member buy-in, because if there's a single person who doesn't agree with you, and this often comes the case of if the field service manager is just stuck in their old ways, if your field service manager still doesn't have a smartphone, you're gonna be in trouble. If your installers or your mobile resources don't have a smartphone, then you have to, that's the next step, is making sure you're ready to do that change management for the team and resources. But if you don't have the members of the customer service team, the field service team, operations in general, and sales, if it's a sales use case, entirely bought into the need to change, then you're really going to struggle.
With two points that you mentioned, the digital transformation, the change management, how many companies do you see where they are going from whiteboard to a Field Service Lightning versus going from another system to Field Service Lightning?
The vast majority of them are going from a whiteboard to Field Service Lightning. And it is a very difficult project to move from another system to Field Service Lightning, just being perfectly honest, when they have, or to have from a truly robust system. Because we have plenty of people who have incredibly designed spreadsheets in Excel that blow my mind with the amount of macros and things that they've put into it and the amount of time that they've spent in their babies. But if they're trying to move over to Salesforce from an IFS, a ServiceMax, a Service Titan, then the name of the game changes, because the biggest problems you're going to see is that people coming over from other technologies are moving from a different set of assumptions of how field service works. ServiceMax assumes you're doing field service in a different way, all the way down to a bucket, which is just saying, we're going to fill the bucket. We assume we can do this amount of work in a day, versus Field Service Lightning, which is their lovely marketing term of truth-based appointment booking. When we book an appointment at any time, we know that that person is available, that they have the right skill sets, that the drive time is going to be appropriate. And there are a lot of like differing changes that you're going to see of potentially bad habits, arguably, in between those two titans that you have to break to make the switch in between.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's also a little more involvement and expectation setting. I know that a lot of people with Sales Cloud, especially for a lot of experienced consultants, they can go in and say, I know exactly what you need. Give me a couple days, I'll go build it and whatever, and then I can turn it over to the team and give you some minor training, but you're off and running. This sounds like there is a lot more involvement, not only from your end, but also from the client's end.
Yep, and that's a huge component, because when I go to somebody and say, and actually this is one of my biggest challenges when I was at Click Software, is clients come to us and say, well, we just want to go to field service lightning. And I've got to push back on them and say, there is no lift and shift. You cannot take a whiteboard and turn it into field service lightning. And chances are there are things that you are doing in your organization that accommodated for your paper or Excel-based capabilities that need to be completely changed and redesigned and thought about in new ways. Because one of the things that I make this akin to is actually, if you think about a driverless car. Now, I imagine most people on paper, to me, is somebody who knows how to drive a really fast bicycle. And they've changed the wheels out a little bit, they know what it's doing, but it's entirely people powered. The very first step is to just teach them how to drive a car and understand what's going, because it's entirely new mechanics of what's going on and those basic capabilities. And then actually rolling up that cycle to be able to do more and more and more. But you cannot take somebody who knows how to ride a bicycle and assume that they're suddenly going to be able to drive a car. They're very different capabilities.
Sure. And it does sound like there's so much that does go into it, especially starting from the whiteboard and going into field service lightning. Is the implementation of field service lightning, is that an all or nothing? Are you going from whiteboard to automated appointments, or like how can it be phased in?
So we actually, and this is something I've discussed with Salesforce as well, I never, ever, ever, ever recommend a big bang approach to field service lightning. It's too much change at once and too many business process changes. And I'm going to continue the car analogy here, is that if I take somebody and I've got them on a bicycle, I'm going to move them to just driving a car. I'm going to give them the ability to press the gas, press the brake, but they're deciding where they're going. They're deciding how fast they're getting there. They're deciding where to turn and how to adjust that. That's simply getting on field service lightning and using that manual drag and drop. Then each of the tools that move up that optimization cycle is the ability to just kind of say, we're going to give them slightly more tools to be able to optimize and automate. But this becomes a scenario of, I think that it would be akin to somebody trying to go directly to optimization would be like volunteering to test out an untested autonomous vehicle. You haven't tested it in your scenario, you haven't tested it in your use case, you haven't made sure that it drives the places that you want it to go, you haven't checked and validated your own assumptions on roads in which it's okay to crash. And if you try to do that, all of a sudden you're going to realize that you didn't plan for snow the first time you encountered snow, and you're in an autonomous vehicle, and the company crash is going to be about as big as the actual crash.
Yep. I think that car analogy is very good. With talking about all the different aspects of it, and especially the client involvement, who are the key stakeholders that really need to be involved in implementing field service lightning?
So really it's anybody who interacts with the moment somebody says, I need to go out to the field, to the point in which that is completed. And that's something that actually comes up a lot, is when you're doing field service, in order to get it all the way through, you're touching most areas of the business. You have a sales team potentially who says, we need to send out to scope this. Like, it may be that the sales team is calling out and wants to send somebody out for a window company to figure out how much it's actually going to cost to install those windows. It might be a B2B manufacturing company that has a $10 million piece of equipment that we have to see how it's going to fit, whether it's going to be able to install, how much it takes, but you have to send somebody out to accomplish that work. So you need to have the people involved who are sending people out to do the work on the sales or that customer service component of, I have an installation, a repair or maintenance of people and or machinery and or anything else under the sun. So they need to be involved because they're going to interface. Then you have the entire operations team and the field service team, which really includes the director of operation or director of field service, any field service managers who are managing and training the teams, because they're the ones who are going to provide us a lot of that data. Then you have the dispatch team, which tends to be separate at large organizations from customer service, who is actually putting these pieces together. You have to have a voice from the people who are actually doing the work, because they're going to voice these things out. But then a lot of the forgotten pieces is, chances are when you're out there, you need inventory. You need something that you're installing, repairing, and maintaining, whether that's a mask for a nurse, or whether that's a major piece of equipment, or whether that's wrenches and toolkits to be able to repair for a repair company. So you need to involve that aspect of the business, which may get, and that's where a lot of people screw up, is not bringing in that part of the ERP, enterprise resource planning, accounting, because you may be charging the customer while on site. They may owe you service. And so it's each of those key components really tie together, and you can't just tie in just those field service portions or just the field service management.
Yeah, so you cannot do this in a bubble.
No,
yep.
Not in the least.
Yep. So you're on the path of the field service lightning implementation. What are some additional customizations that field service lightning has that people could also consider implementing?
So things that often get left out, because people are often trying to go down that optimization life cycle, and that's what I tell them a lot is, that's the steps along the way to the autonomous car. You've got to train your vehicle. We're giving you the tools to create it, but it's not a pre-created driverless car. We're helping you do that. So that's the one that I often have to coach people through to understand. Some things that they often neglect that are really, really powerful is chances are for most industries, your installer, your mobile resource, a certain percentage of them do not have a smartphone, and a certain percentage of them, if they do have a smartphone, have never used anything that doesn't look like the phone button or the message button on it. So they're not necessarily technology savvy. They probably use Siri's unfortunately bad text to speak because they don't type very well. So one thing that we tend to do is, like, the initial after phase one, just getting them on there, we do the most amount to two groups of people. We go to the mobile resources and look at every physical thing that they need to do and reduce the clicks more than anything else, because most likely you're not dealing with a Gen Z who moves a mile a minute. They're getting frustrated if they have to take more than a couple steps to do what they need to do on site. So the more steps you can reduce there, using mobile flows, using quick actions, using guided experience, well, not guided experiences in that app, but to be able to reduce that down, especially because those are the people who are going to be the most impacted, most likely with the least technological capabilities. And then the second group of people we tend to help a lot is the dispatcher. The dispatcher console is highly customizable, and most people neglect taking a look at all of the individual components that can go into simplifying their experience. Because if you think about it in one way, if you looked at one page all day, that would be the dispatcher. The dispatcher ideally should never, ever have to leave that dispatcher console. And that is the number one thing that we try to do, is to say, hey, are they leaving to go search for this information on the work order? Okay, let's make sure to present it. Are they leaving continually to do this certain type of action? Let's make an action for them to do. Because every time they leave that massive heavy page that takes 10 seconds to load, you're drastically reducing their experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've touched on a lot of great points. Let me ask you this. What is some of your favorite functionality in Field Service Lightning?
So, optimization fascinates me. I feel on the bleeding edge of everything in terms of what Click Software and Salesforce together have been able to do out of that optimization engine is, I mean, you're training, they're getting into machine learning, but at the time, it's just one of the most robust optimization capabilities. And what's going on in the background when you use global optimization is so incredibly fascinating. And that's what I love most, is one of the things that isn't even a plug for us, it's a plug for whoever when you go out there, is the hardest piece about Field Service Lightning is making sure you get the foundation right, because the foundation is getting the tools that allows optimization to work. Because if you don't plug in this, when you try to go up the chain to use optimization, you're going to have broken it. It would be like trying to create your driverless car and not realizing that when you actually want to drive it, you're going to need an exhaust because you didn't plan for those capabilities. And then the second piece that's been fascinating me is IoT. Is one of the things that a lot of companies don't understand is the technology for IoT is perfectly there. Salesforce has had it since roughly 2017. You can do incredible things with the ability, like, I'm just imagining my computer having an issue and Apple texting me to say, we've already sent you a replacement in a box that is going to come in and send it out because we've already identified an issue with your computer. That technology is there. It's just getting companies to be able to use it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that I think the IoT is very exciting. Well, first, let me just thank you for giving us the background and the overview and talking to us about what that implementation path looks like. What I'd like to do is open it up for some questions from the audience, and I do see we already have one. You and I have talked a lot about, and through the examples, a lot about field service lightning in terms of service. Can you give some examples of how it's used for field sales?
Yep. So field sales tends to come in when, and this is the major distinction for people, is you might have mobile salespeople, but the number one question is, can you schedule those salespeople? Because if you're an insurance company and your insurance company is constantly sending people out to go check on clients, but they manage their own schedule, not a fit, not a use case at all. But if you're, for instance, a solar company, like one of a major solar provider, and you have a lead funnel that's sending people in and qualifying them, but you need to send somebody out to go seal the deal and check how much it's going to be, then you can totally send it to field service. If you're a company that does consumer goods where you're selling off the truck, you can send somebody on a route to those places, and while they're there, discuss. If they have there was a tobacco company where it's like you visit people on a weekly basis and it runs the track of that. Anywhere in which you have a territory that you manage and you have the ability to schedule. And that's actually the single largest challenge I've met with dealing with salespeople, is similar to, like, no salesperson would want you, who believes they know their territory perfectly, to tell you how to schedule it. And that becomes the challenge, is wresting away that control from them to say, I promise you, I'm going to design your territory and your routes in such a way that is going to minimize your travel, going to put you out there in the right way, and still giving them enough control that that they believe that they can hit their numbers and trust that you're giving them that best opportunity.
Got it. Thank you. While we're waiting on some other questions, let me ask you kind of a personal question, but when you're dealing with stuff outside of work and you're calling people and you need your washing machine fixed or something goes wrong with your refrigerator, are you constantly going through your head of, you can kind of see how their processes are working or not working?
Oh my God, all the time. And that's actually one of the things that fascinates me, is I've had problems with nearly every Apple device I own in the past month. And each time it's just like thinking through that customer service of being like, man, they could do this just a little bit better. And then same with field service. I just mentioned, like, Lauren, my significant other, has been waiting for National Grid for like 3 separate days, in which luckily we've been working from home for coronavirus, but that was my exact example. Is they were like, we let you know 15 minutes in advance. We live 18 minutes away. So I have seen her multiple times get on the phone and sprint out to the car. And I happen to know the technology that they're using. And I know that they're using it in a way that could have been better and could have designed these things. So each time it's just fun to look at. And I tend to see that biggest challenge of people refusing to change their business practices to utilize the technology that's available to them to make them better.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we could have probably all go with some similar experiences of when people are using technology or not using technology. Good. Well, we still have a couple minutes for questions. If anybody has any, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll definitely be able to help get those answered. Yep, got another one. Yep. You see it too?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the question is, are there other situations where you shouldn't use FSL? This is one where I have to constantly keep up to date because Salesforce is ravenous at being able to adjust new use cases. But the number one use case that I think is still not quite shouldn't, but should be approached in interesting ways is project management. If you have a large enough field service component in which there is so much of a project that you have to be handled, FSL is not designed for projects. It is designed to manage a work order being sent out. Best case scenario for FSL, it's designed to say, solar panel. I have to send somebody out to inspect the site, then I have to, and prepare the site, then I have to send somebody to install it, then I have to send somebody to connect to grid. That's about the project management your capabilities are handling. There are tools that extend outward, but I've rarely met a customer who likes it when we're in the middle of discovery and I tell them that they have to buy this project management tool and find somebody to implement that as they're already starting a discovery. A secondary component is workforce management, but I do know that's in the designs of Salesforce. But workforce management tends to be the distinction in between field service. I am here in my house in Buffalo. I am going to go somewhere and fix somebody's something, and then I'm going to go somewhere else and come home. What FSL is not designed to do is I'm a long-range trucking company, or I have to send people all over the country, and I want a tool that's going to say, based on what you have going on, send somebody to Colorado for a week, then to Minnesota for a week, or this is going to be their path across the country. FSL assumes you're going home at the end of the day.
Okay.
So those are two of the big ones that I tend to come up with. Oh, and shifts is another one that I would say don't use it for another year. Like if you're trying to do shift management, whether that's your security guard, retail, they are currently building that out, but that was another use case that was causing people a lot of trouble because it wasn't designed for shifts. It was designed for Johnny works from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, sometimes has emergencies afterwards that we can make Johnny go to because somebody's plumbing is leaking, but not the, hey, I'm going to select my specific shifts week by week and it's variable and I have to hit I can't schedule them more than 30 hours because of, I don't want to pay them health insurance.
Yep.
You have those kind of struggles.
Right. And you talked a lot about, and well, this will be the last question. You talked a lot about the people that are going out to service. Does it manage resources as well? If somebody has a truck that they're like, this is their truck or a company truck, does it manage those types of resources?
Yep, and that comes up a lot, whether there's two real use cases. There's I have the truck, but I'm not wedded to my truck, so I need to pair it together because you might have 50 people coming in at the beginning of the day, and depending on what's going on, they're going to take different trucks. So you have that kind of comparison and moving things together, and that one takes a bit of alignment. And the other one that tends to come to scenario is just as much as you want to utilize your resources, your human resources that are valuable. If you're a company that rents cranes for a couple thousand a day, you really want to know where the crane is and make sure that you can find a way to get somebody there and not lose a day when you're renting it for several $1,000s a day. So you can actually schedule equipment as well, and they have equipment licensing that's drastically reduced that allows you to do that.
Okay, good. Well, David, thank you so much for your time today, for answering our field service lightning questions. I know speaking for myself, being around the Salesforce ecosystem for a while, it's new and it's something that I don't know much about, but just sounds like an incredible tool for the right fit. So thank you again for taking time out of your day to speak with us about it.
Thank you very much. Always enjoy it.
Perfect. And for anybody who has any questions, feel free to ping either of us on Twitter. You can email us at 10K. We'll obviously get everybody in touch and get questions answered. But thank you everyone for attending and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.